The spaceport of Varel 9 was always busy, filled with sounds of engines, traders shouting, and aliens from every star system walking by. But among all the noise and movement, one person sat still on a hover chair with no legs. His name was Jace, a human war veteran who had lost both legs during a defense mission on a distant moon. Now he lived quietly, fixing machines and droids, offering help for a few credits. Most people walked past him without even looking, as if his broken body made him invisible. Jace didn't care anymore. He had no family, no home planet left, and the galaxy had moved on without him. But he kept living, kept surviving. He was sharp, skilled, and knew more about alien tech than most engineers. Still, no one trusted a legless human for real work. To them, he was just a reminder of war's cost. That day, everything changed when a high-class left car stopped in front of him. It was smooth and shining, made of a material he couldn't even name. The doors opened, and from it stepped a woman so stunning, even the guards nearby turned their heads. She wasn't human. Her skin was a rich silver blue, eyes glowing faintly, and her presence screamed wealth and power. Her name was Lady Varaya, heir to one of the most powerful alien families in the Heiress sector, and she was looking straight at Jace. "I need a human," she said simply, her voice calm but cold. Jace blinked, unsure if she was serious. "Sorry, lady," he said. "I'm not exactly in full condition." He nodded to his missing legs. She tilted her head slightly. "I know, that's why I chose you." The silence between them was loud. Even the droids paused their work nearby, sensing something unusual. "I'm not for sale," Jace added, gripping the arms of his hover chair tighter. "I'm not buying you," Varaya replied. "I'm hiring you." Her golden assistant stepped forward and handed him a thin crystal chip. "Read it," she said. "Then decide." With a sigh, Jace inserted the chip into his arm console. The details shocked him. 10,000 credits a week, full medical coverage, private room, and complete access to Varaya's floating estate. His job? To accompany her during private diplomatic missions as her human representative and emotional companion. Basically, a partner without the legal titles. "You could choose anyone," Jace muttered, staring at the terms. "I don't want anyone," she said, her voice softer now. "I want someone real, someone who has lost something. Like me." She turned away slightly. "I have everything: power, money, beauty, but I've never had someone who looks at me like I'm not a trophy." Jace watched her closely now. She wasn't just a cold alien noble, she was lonely. And maybe, just maybe, she saw something in him no one else did. A broken man who still refused to give up. Someone who couldn't walk, but who could still stand for something. "Why me?" he asked one last time. Varaya looked at him and smiled, just a little. "Because you didn't beg when I arrived," she said. "You didn't look at me like I was a goddess." She stepped back into the left car. "If you're ready, come. Tomorrow." Then the doors closed, and she vanished into the sky. Jace sat there in silence, his fingers trembling around the chip. He had no legs, no pride left, no home. But for the first time in years, someone had offered him a future. He wasn't sure if he could trust her. But deep down, something whispered, this might be the beginning of everything he had lost. Jace stood at the edge of the floating estate's landing bay. The sun of Varel 9 painted the sky orange and gold, reflecting off the polished glass towers behind him. Hover drones buzzed past him, scanning his ID chip. Security was tight, but they let him through without a single question. Varaya had clearly prepared for his arrival. He rolled forward in his hover chair, staring at the place. It was not just wealth, it was beyond anything he had ever seen. Marble that shimmered with starlight, floating gardens, and walls made of semi-living crystal. The estate pulsed with quiet energy, as if the building itself could breathe. A tall alien servant with golden skin and 6 fingers approached. "Sir Jace, Lady Varaya awaits you in the glass chamber." The voice was smooth and calm. He followed, feeling out of place, like a cracked tool placed among royal jewels. But he kept his chin up. He'd survived worse, and this time, He wasn't crawling, he was being invited. The glass chamber was something else. Clear floors, transparent ceilings, and floating orbs of light moved like stars around a galaxy. And in the center, Heiress stood barefoot on a floating disc, meditating with her eyes closed. Her silver-blue skin shimmered, as if dusted in diamond powder. Jace didn't speak, just waited. Finally, she opened her eyes and looked at him. "You came," she said with a soft smile. "Still wondering why," he replied, rolling closer. "I told you," she said, stepping down from the disc. "I wanted someone real." They sat across from each other as an invisible table formed between them. Exotic food appeared, steamed petals, glowing fruits, and a warm drink that smelled like cinnamon and honey. Jace hesitated. This is all for me?" "You'll need your strength," Heiress said. "Tonight, we go to the council summit." "Wait." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Already? What do I even do there?" "You just be yourself," she said, "and let them see that I choose who I want, not who they want me to marry." Jace froze, his mind catching the meaning. "This is about a marriage deal?" Heiress's eyes darkened slightly. "They expect me to bond with some noble, some boring prince who only sees me as a symbol. But if I arrive with you, a human war veteran with no legs, they'll be forced to react. So I'm a shock tactic," he said flatly. "You are a storm in a room full of silent statues." She corrected. "And if you do this, they'll stop treating me like property." She looked away for a moment, her tone turning colder. "You don't understand what it's like to be beautiful in a cage." Jace leaned back in his chair, looking at her in a new way. Maybe this wasn't just about him proving himself. Maybe she was trapped, just differently than he was. "You sure you want to bring a cripple to your fancy ball?" he asked, testing her. "You're not crippled," she said. "You're armored in scars, and they hate scars, because scars mean survival." Later that night, they stood side by side in the summit hall. Alien nobles in shimmering robes watched them like predators waiting to strike. Heiress held her head high, hand resting gently on Jace's hover chair. The crowd whispered, confused and offended. Jace didn't flinch, didn't hide, and then came the voice from the council's grand speaker. "Lady Heiress," it boomed. "What is the meaning of this pairing?" She stepped forward, voice calm and cutting. "This is Jace, a human who has lost more than most of you ever will. He is my companion by choice, not by law. He reminds me that freedom is not a gift, it's something you fight for." The hall fell silent. For the first time, Jace felt like more than a broken man. He was a message, a symbol, a presence, and beside him, the most desired woman in the system chose to stand not above him, but with him. That night, something began to shift, not just in the council, not just in the room, but in the hearts of two very different beings, both tired of being seen as less, and maybe, just maybe, they could become more together. The morning after the summit, the entire Heiress sector was buzzing. News feeds ran with headlines like, "Alien Heiress brings human cripple to council gala," and "Bold or insane?" Heiress shocks the nobility. Some called it rebellion, others called it disgusting. But Jace didn't care anymore, because for the first time, someone had stood by him in front of the galaxy. He sat in his guest suite, high above the clouds, where the estate floated on silent gravity fields. The room smelled of alien incense and clean air. For a man who used to sleep in machine junkyards and abandoned cargo bays, it felt like a dream he didn't earn. The door opened without a knock. Heiress entered, no makeup, no jewelry, just herself, wrapped in a soft robe that shimmered like moonlight. "Didn't think you'd still be here," she said with a quiet smile. "Didn't think you'd want me to be," Jace answered, rubbing his tired eyes. Heiress walked to the balcony, staring at the city lights far below. "They've started threatening me," she said after a long pause. "Subtle messages from the nobles. Warnings, alliances being pulled. They think you're embarrassing me, weakening me." She turned, eyes burning softly. "But I feel more alive now than I ever did in all their fake approval." Jace rolled closer, his hover chair humming low. "Then let me be your embarrassment," he said dryly. That made her laugh, a real one, not the polite noblewoman's mask. And just for that moment, the walls between them cracked. Later that day, Jace was taken to the estate's private tech lab. It wasn't just any lab, it was a place where prototype alien devices were built in secret. A tall insectoid engineer named Tharn greeted him, mandibles clicking in rhythm. "Lady Varaya has ordered a gift," Tharn said, "and it must fit your spirit." Before Jace could reply, two drone arms brought out a strange object, a pair of sleek, artificial legs, not just prosthetics. These were something more. Made from memory alloy and smart tissue, designed to connect directly with his nervous system. Fully adaptive, Tharn explained. Built with Warframe tech, but designed for peace. Jay stared at them, heart pounding. He hadn't stood on his own in years. The feeling of loss had never left him, like a ghost pain that haunted his every breath. But now he was being offered a chance not just to move, but to fight again, to live again. "Why is she doing this?" he whispered. Tharn tilted his head. "Because she sees something rising in you. Human. She gives you the tools, but the choice to stand must come from you." That night, as the moons of Virel 9 rose, Jace stood, slowly, shakily, painfully, but he stood. His first step was awkward. His second nearly sent him falling. But on the third, he laughed a deep, raw sound from a man who thought his legs were lost forever. Varaya watched from the shadows, her arms crossed, eyes unreadable. He didn't see her, but she saw everything. How he gritted his teeth. How he refused to give up. How each step made him more than just a symbol. He was becoming a force tomorrow. She would take him to the core of her family's ancient estate, to reveal secrets even her ancestors had buried. But tonight, she watched as the broken human began to walk again. And she knew whatever storm was coming, she had chosen the right one to face it with. Asterisk thunder rolled quietly across the skies of Virel 9, as Jace followed Varaya through a passage no servant dared to enter. The air grew colder the deeper they went, the walls pulsing with old energy alive, whispering secrets through ancient lines of glowing script. "This place isn't on your estate map," Jace said, adjusting to his new artificial legs, which still ached with every step. Varaya didn't answer right away. She held a small orb in her hand, and it lit their way with a violet glow. "This chamber is older than my family's bloodline," she finally said. It was sealed after the first silence. "What's that?" Jace asked. "The moment when power became fear," she replied, her voice echoing strangely through the curved stone walls. They arrived at a door huge and shaped like a rising sun, etched in symbols that hurt Jace's eyes to look at. Varaya pressed her palm against it, and the door didn't open. It dissolved. Behind it was not a room, but a sphere of energy floating above nothing, held in place by invisible forces. Within that sphere was something Jace could barely understand. A figure, human-like, but not human, frozen in light. It pulsed slowly, as if breathing. "Is that alive?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "No," Varaya said, "but it once was. And it spoke of a time when humans and our kind were not enemies or strangers, but bonded." Jay stepped closer, the hum of the chamber vibrating in his artificial legs. "What do you mean bonded?" "Not just friends," Varaya said. "Connected, soul to soul, something we call the binding. It was lost during the early wars, when trust shattered between our species." She turned to face him fully. "I think you are the key to bringing it back." Jay shook his head. "Me? I'm a broken soldier, not some chosen one." "You're more than that," she said firmly. "You're the only human who walked into the council and didn't lower his head. You carry pain, but you don't let it own you." He looked again at the glowing figure in the sphere. There was something haunting about it, almost familiar, and then it opened its eyes. Jace stumbled back, but Varaya held him steady. "It responds to you," she said breathlessly. "That means it still remembers." The figure spoke, but not in sound. The words entered Jace's mind like a whisper from behind a locked door. Will you walk the path of union once lost? Jace blinked, heart racing. Is this some kind of test? No, the voice said inside his head. This is a choice. He looked at Viraya, her expression unreadable but waiting, hoping. Say yes, she whispered. Not for me, but for what we both could become, and something in Jace something. Deeper than logic or fear answered. Yes, he said aloud. And the chamber shuddered like a beast waking from sleep. The energy sphere brightened, and a thread of light reached from the figure to Jace's chest. It didn't burn. It warmed, filling him with something he had forgotten long ago, belonging. When the light faded, the figure had vanished, but Jace remained standing, and inside him, something new had taken root. Not a weapon, not power but connection. Viraya stepped forward and touched his chest. Now you're not just walking again, she said softly. Now you're walking with me. The sky over Virel 9 turned crimson as sirens echoed through the floating cities. The council chambers had been attacked, their highest members scattered or killed by an unknown force. But it wasn't a mystery to Viraya. She knew exactly who had done it. The House of Rin, she whispered as she stared at the burning skyline. They were a rival noble family, powerful, cruel, and always watching for weakness. Bringing a human to the summit had been more than a scandal, it had been a threat to their traditions. Now they were responding with fire. Jace stood beside her, armor over his chest, synthetic legs adjusting perfectly to his stance. He no longer looked like a forgotten soldier. He looked like someone reborn, eyes sharp, posture steady. Why now? He asked. Because we broke their illusion, she answered. They've controlled the council through fear and blood. But yesterday, we made them feel powerless. Jace loaded the last pulse cell into his weapon. He'd fixed it himself, human tech modified with alien design. Something no one else could have built. What's the plan? He asked. Viraya looked at him, calm despite the chaos. We fight, but not like them. She said, we protect, not destroy. Before the attack, she had been just a noble, trapped in a golden cage. Now she was something else. A leader born from choice, not bloodline, and Jace, the human who once couldn't walk, had become her shadow and her shield. They moved through the estate's outer corridors as explosions rocked the lower levels. Innocents were fleeing, workers, engineers, even children. Jace stopped to lift a young alien girl from the rubble, carrying her with surprising ease. Viraya watched him, how natural he was, even in chaos, not for glory, not for attention. Just for good. When they reached the high vaults, the estate's defensive eye flickered to life. Unauthorized breach in Sector 8, it warned. Multiple lifeforms approaching. Viraya activated the panel, her fingers moving fast. We can't hold the estate alone, she said. But we can seal the vault and buy time. Jace stepped forward. Let me stall them. No, she said sharply. You're not bait. I'm not dying, he replied. I'm standing. He stepped out into the corridor. Weapon ready, 3 armored Rin warriors emerged from the smoke, faces covered in red glass masks. One of them laughed when he saw Jace. A human? This is who you send? Jace didn't speak, he just fired. The blast hit the first warrior dead center, the impact knocking the others back, but they recovered fast, moving in tight formation. Jace moved faster, his legs adjusting to speed and terrain with machine precision. He ducked under one blade, spun sideways, and drove a shock rod into another's chest. He wasn't fighting for war. He was fighting for her, for the life they were building, for the version of himself that still had a future. By the time Viraya reached him again, the hall was filled with smoke, sparks, and silence. Jace stood in the middle, breathing hard but standing tall. Behind him, the enemy lay still. You could have been killed, she said, approaching him quickly. But I wasn't, he replied, because I had something to protect. She reached up and touched his face just briefly. You're more than I hoped for, she said, her voice low. And I'm not done becoming more, he answered. Far above them, Rin warships circled like vultures. The real battle was only beginning. But so was something else, something deeper than war. Something that neither wealth nor legs could buy trust. Asterisk, the stars above Virel 9 were quiet, but beneath them, a storm was ready to break. Jace stood at the edge of the council dome, once a place of order and law, now turned into a battlefield. The nobles were fleeing, the sky filled with private escape crafts. But Virel had stayed. She stood beside Jace, dressed not in silk or jewels, but in armor made of light and will. "This is where we finish it," she said, her voice calm. Jace nodded. One way or another, the House of Rin had declared open war. Calling Virel a traitor to her kind, they had brought mercenaries, drones, even bioengineered beasts to crush her rebellion. But they hadn't expected the human. They hadn't expected Jace. Word of his defense at the estate had spread fast. Images of a legless man standing alone against warriors. Some called it madness, others called it bravery. But to many, especially the common citizens, it had become hope. If someone like him could fight, then maybe they could too. As the enemy forces began marching on the council steps, something unexpected happened. The outer gates opened not to let Rin's army in, but to let the people out. Hundreds, maybe thousands of civilians emerged, carrying tools, improvised weapons, even farming drones converted into walking shields. They stood behind Jace and Virel. Silent, steady, ready. "What is this?" One Rin general barked from a projection screen. "Rebellion?" "No," Virel answered, raising her voice to the heavens. "This is remembrance. You forgot that power is nothing without those who believe in you." Then she stepped forward, and Jace followed. He moved like thunder, each step powered by the gift of the legs she had given him. But driven by something no machine could build: purpose. The battle began in a flash, but it wasn't just soldiers this time. It was engineers hacking drones mid-air. It was mothers shielding children while guiding laser fire with perfect aim. It was an old merchant throwing energy grenades from his fruit cart. And in the center of it all, Jace. He fought like he had nothing to lose, but everything to protect. Virel fought beside him, not as a princess, but as a warrior. Not once did she fall behind him. Not once did he leave her side. When the Rin flagship landed in the middle of the city plaza, the final confrontation began. The Rin High Lord stepped out covered in armored plates and hatred. "You are just a cripple who was handed a crown," he growled, raising his blade at Jace. "And you," he turned to Virel, "you betrayed your blood for a pet." Jace stepped forward without fear. "I'm not her pet," he said. "I'm her choice." The duel was brutal. Sparks flying across the broken stone. Jace's legs took hits but held. His body bruised but unshaken. He moved with precision, his human instincts blending with alien tech in a way no one had seen before. And in a final strike, he disarmed the High Lord and brought him to his knees. Virel approached slowly, looking down at the defeated noble. "The old ways are done," she said. "We walk forward now with those who choose each other, not those forced by blood." That night, the war ended not in blood, but in unity. Virel stood before her people, not just as a noble, but as a leader reborn. And Jace, once a forgotten soldier with no legs, now stood taller than any warrior on that stage. Not because of the armor, not because of the artificial limbs, but because he had been chosen not as a tool, but as a partner. When they looked at each other, no words were needed. In a galaxy that had thrown them both aside, they had found strength, purpose, and something deeper: love. 2 months had passed since the battle that changed the stars. The House of Rin had been broken, their ships grounded, their name reduced to memory. Virel's leadership was no longer questioned, not by the council, not by the public, but she didn't rule with a crown. She ruled by walking side by side with the one man no one had expected to stand again, Jace. He no longer used the hover chair. Each morning, he walked with strength, his new legs adjusted perfectly. No longer feeling foreign, the pain was gone, replaced by something warmer, belonging. Virel watched him from the balcony of the tower they now shared. He was in the garden below, helping alien children build small drone birds that could sing. Every child laughed with him, climbed on him, hugged him. They didn't see a broken soldier or a human outsider. They saw someone safe. "You've changed this place," she said when he came upstairs, wiping dust from his hands. "I just fixed what was already here," he replied, smiling. They stood in silence for a while, watching the clouds pass below. Varel 9 had never looked so peaceful. But the galaxy had noticed. Other systems were sending messages asking how a noble and a human had united so many. Some were inspired, others afraid. A new power had formed not through war, but through choice. "I'm receiving invitations," Varela said, "from planets who want our help. Diplomacy?" Jace asked. "Peacekeeping," she said. "Together." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at her, really looked. He remembered the first time he saw her step out of the left car, rich, perfect, untouchable, and now she stood in front of him, real, strong, and deeply flawed in all the ways that made her whole. "You sure they'll follow us?" he asked. "They're already watching," she said. "We don't have to be perfect, Jace, we just have to be real." Later that night, they held a private gathering. No nobles, no council, just people. Varela and Jace stood before them. No speeches, no long promises. Just a simple vow to build a new alliance where no one was lesser, where pain didn't mean exile, and where strength wasn't measured in bloodlines. And in that moment, they weren't princess and protector, not alien and human. They were two souls who had fought to stand side by side. The children lit lanterns and let them float into the night sky. Each one carried a message of hope, drifting into the stars. As the lights faded into the dark, Jace reached for her hand. "You still don't regret choosing me?" he asked with a half smile. Varela squeezed his hand gently. "You weren't a choice," she whispered. "You were the reason I started choosing." And far above them, in the silence between stars, the galaxy turned, not with war, not with conquest, but with the quiet revolution of two broken lives choosing each other. The end.